Here's a detailed, 1,300-word explanation of Part 1 in simple English. Written to be interesting and engaging, the calm of deep space was broken one morning by an unexpected signal. For months, the scientists and astronomers at the Star System's monitoring array had been observing the quiet hum of distant planets and satellites. They were used to routine readings, asteroids drifting lazily, small cargo ships moving between colonies, and occasional messages from nearby exploration vessels. Life in this corner of the galaxy was orderly and peaceful. People had grown accustomed to the regularity, trusting that all human activity in the system was known, documented, and controlled. So when an anomaly appeared on their screens, it was more than just unusual, it was shocking at first. The reading was subtle, almost easy to dismiss. A small, fast-moving object had entered the outer boundary of the system. The monitoring team assumed it was a cargo or exploration craft that had failed to announce itself properly. But as the scanners focused and recalibrated, the object's size and structure became clearer. It was not just a ship, it was a human warship. That fact alone caused the room to go silent. Not a single person had seen a warship like this appear without any prior notice. It was as if a ghost had suddenly appeared in the system, completely unauthorized and unexplained. The scientists stared at the data in disbelief. Every sensor reading was double-checked. The ship's mass, its propulsion system, and its armaments were all consistent with a warship, one that belonged to human design, not alien. It was heavily armed, far more than any cargo or exploration vessel, with what appeared to be advanced weapon systems. No civilian vessel could carry so much firepower without attracting immediate attention. What made it even more mysterious was that it was completely absent from any official registry. Every ship in the galaxy was tracked and logged, from the smallest shuttle to the largest dreadnought. Yet here was a massive warship moving freely, as if it had been hiding from everyone. News of the anomaly quickly reached the military authorities in the Star System. Communications buzzed frantically as officers tried to confirm the identity of the ship. Every channel was checked, every database cross-referenced, yet there was no record. No known fleet had launched a mission like this. No human command had authorized this warship to enter the system. The realization hit hard. Someone had broken the rules in a way no one thought possible. It was not just a mistake or an error. This was an unauthorized, deliberate entry into controlled space. The civilian population, though still unaware, was about to feel the tension. In the control rooms, military strategists began mapping the ship's trajectory. It was not moving randomly. It had a purpose, heading toward the inner planets, passing through key checkpoints without slowing down. This was not a scouting mission or an exploratory journey. The ship was moving with intent, and that intent was unknown. Fear began to grow, not in panic yet, but in that tight, uncomfortable way that comes from realizing that something powerful, unpredictable, and human-made was now in their space. Meanwhile, back at the observatory, the scientists debated the possibilities. Was this a rogue mission, a faction that had broken away from Earth's central command, or perhaps a secret program operating outside the law? They ran simulations, trying to guess the ship's speed and intentions, but every prediction only deepened the mystery. Its sudden appearance suggested advanced propulsion technology, far superior to what was publicly known. The ship could have traveled from a distant sector in record time, appearing almost out of nowhere. The implications were unsettling. If humans could build ships capable of entering star systems undetected, what else could they do without anyone knowing? The tension in the monitoring rooms was palpable. Every scientist, every technician, felt the weight of responsibility. This was history unfolding in real. They had discovered something extraordinary and dangerous. Orders came down quickly. Track it constantly, keep it under surveillance, and maintain communication readiness. Every sensor in the system was trained on the intruder. Nothing could move undetected while it was there. The array's computers worked tirelessly, calculating potential trajectories and mapping the ship's hull, weapons, and shields as best they could from a distance. As hours passed, small anomalies began to appear in the readings. The ship's energy signatures were unusual, inconsistent with standard human warship designs. Its shields fluctuated in strange patterns, suggesting either experimental technology or highly sophisticated stealth systems. The more the scientists examined the ship, the more they realized how little they actually knew. For all practical purposes, this ship was a mystery, a human enigma. They were seeing the physical evidence of something completely outside the normal boundaries of law, regulation, and even imagination. On the ground, in the cities orbiting the star system, security forces began to prepare quietly. While the public was still unaware, briefings were held with local commanders, defensive protocols were checked, war games were run, and contingency plans were created. Every possibility had to be considered: peaceful intentions, hostile takeover, or a desperate plea for help. The authorities had no choice but to prepare for the worst. An unauthorized warship in their system was not just a warning, it was a threat. The first night after the discovery was restless. Scientists took turns monitoring the ship, and everyone in the command centers knew sleep would be scarce. Rumors began to circulate, whispered between personnel in dark corners. Could it be survivors from a lost mission? Is this a rogue military experiment? Or are they criminals, outlaws with the power to destroy everything? Each suggestion sounded more terrifying than the last. And yet, despite the fear, there was a strange fascination. They were witnessing a piece of history. Something no one alive had ever seen. Throughout this phase, the ship's presence changed the system in subtle ways. Satellites shifted to monitor it constantly, communications were encrypted, and every routine flight had to be delayed or rerouted. Nothing could happen normally while this intruder was near. That humans in the system had to accept that their environment, once predictable and safe, was now unpredictable. Even minor decisions carried weight. A ship moving through traffic at the wrong time could trigger panic. A miscalculation could be fatal. Every action had to be precise, careful, and deliberate. The message was clear. The unauthorized human warship was not going away, and no one knew why it was there. It was a silent, looming presence at the edge of the star system, a puzzle that combined danger, mystery, and awe. The scientists and military officers realized that this was just the beginning. How the situation would unfold depended on choices that had yet to be made, conversations that had yet to happen, and intentions that were completely unknown. In that moment, everyone understood that the peaceful star system had entered a new era, one in which humans themselves could no longer be fully trusted, even to remain within the rules they had all agreed to. The tension, curiosity, and fear had only just begun. The calm life of the system was shattered, replaced by a quiet urgency and anticipation. What came next would depend on whether this mysterious warship meant harm or help, and no one yet knew the answer. This explanation expands Part 1 into a full, immersive narrative in simple English while keeping it engaging and suspenseful if you want. I can continue the same way for Part 2, making it equally detailed and thrilling. Do you want me to do that? The situation in the star system grew more tense as hours passed. The first phase of shock and surprise was over, but now suspicion and fear began to rise. The unauthorized human warship, still hovering at the edge of the system, had become the center of attention for everyone. From scientists to military officers to political leaders, what no one could explain was why it was here, how it had managed to enter undetected, and what its intentions were. The calm of space was gone, replaced by nervous anticipation. The military command centers were buzzing with activity. Analysts and strategists ran simulations non-stop, trying to understand the possible threats this ship could pose. Every small detail mattered: its speed, its trajectory, its energy emissions, even the way it maneuvered. They had to consider every possible scenario, from peaceful exploration to hostile attack. Each theory brought a mix of hope and dread. Could this be a ship in distress seeking refuge, or was it a deliberate act of aggression? No one had the answer, and that uncertainty made the fear grow stronger. Rumors began to spread among the defense personnel and scientists. Some speculated that the warship belonged to a rogue military faction that had broken away from Earth's central command. Others suggested it might be a group of deserters, individuals who had stolen a powerful ship and were now operating outside the law. The idea that humans themselves could be a threat to this system was unsettling. Everyone knew that space was dangerous, but danger usually came from the unknown alien forces, natural phenomena, accidents. To think that another human could create chaos was a new kind of fear. Meanwhile, civilian populations were still largely unaware, but authorities quietly prepared for the possibility of conflict. Security forces on orbital stations and planets began to run emergency drills. Evacuation plans were reviewed, and communication channels were reinforced. Everything had to be ready in case the warship acted aggressively. Even though there was no evidence yet of hostile intent, no one could afford to take chances. Every precaution was necessary. Because of the unknown factors surrounding the ship, analysts studying the ship discovered more unusual characteristics. Its technology was far more advanced than any known human warship. Its propulsion systems allowed it to move with unprecedented speed, and its energy shields fluctuated in ways that didn't match any standard design. The ship seemed to be almost self-aware in the way it adjusted its position, avoiding detection in some areas while boldly entering others. It was as if it had intelligence beyond the human crew that manned it. This revelation only deepened the sense of unease. A vessel that could move undetected, even with modern monitoring arrays, was dangerous in ways no one fully understood. In the command centers, debates raged over how to handle the situation. Should they attempt communication immediately, or observe silently for more clues? What if the crew was hostile and communication attempts provoked an attack? Officers argued over the options, but every suggestion came with risks. They realized that this situation was unprecedented. No warship had ever entered the system without authorization, and no protocol existed for dealing with such an event. The strategies they used for known threats did not apply. They were forced to improvise while still trying to remain careful and precise. Back at the monitoring arrays, scientists and technicians worked tirelessly to gather as much information as possible. Every reading, every signal, and every movement was recorded and analyzed. They looked for patterns in the ship's energy emissions, hoping to understand its power source. They studied its trajectory to guess where it might go next. They even tried to predict the behavior of the crew based on their movements. Each piece of information brought small insights but also more questions. The more they learned, the more they realized how little they actually knew about this ship and the people aboard it. Suspicion among military leaders began to grow alongside fear. The fact that this was a human vessel meant that anyone could be behind it: scientists, engineers, ex-military personnel, or even criminal organizations. If a small group of humans could build a warship capable of entering a star system without detection, what other capabilities might they have? What was their goal, and could it be stopped if it turned aggressive? The uncertainty weighed heavily on the leaders, who understood that the wrong decision could lead to disaster. Every second the ship remained in the system increased the tension and the stakes. In civilian life, though unaware of the full danger, small disruptions began to be felt. Routine communications experienced slight delays, and some transportation routes for cargo and shuttles were temporarily suspended. People on planets and stations noticed the heightened activity of security personnel and the occasional announcements about restricted areas. Even if they did not know the exact reason, a sense of unease began to permeate everyday life. Although the public was not in panic, the tension was palpable in small ways. Whispers, rumors, and speculation became more common. Attempts at communication were carefully planned. Multiple messages were sent to the warship, ranging from standard diplomatic greetings to warnings about restricted areas. At first, there was no response. The silence was deliberate, and that silence created more fear. Every unanswered message increased the uncertainty, making it harder for decision-makers to feel confident in their next steps. Was the crew ignoring them deliberately? Did they not have the technology to respond, or was there some other reason? Each unanswered query was a reminder of the unknown, and the unknown was frightening that as hours turned into days. The presence of the warship began to change the dynamic in the star system. Defense systems remained on high alert at all times, and patrols were increased. Surveillance drones were deployed to follow the ship's movements more closely. Analysts worked around the clock, studying the ship's structure, energy readings, and potential vulnerabilities. Meetings among military and political leaders became constant, each one filled with tension, suspicion, and speculation. They all understood that the situation could escalate quickly if misjudged. The combination of fear and curiosity was evident in every part of the system. Scientists and engineers were fascinated by the ship's technology, even as they were terrified of its potential. Military officers were cautious, but they were also curious about how a human crew could operate a warship in this manner. Each group wanted answers, but answers were slow to come. Every observation led to more questions, and every question increased the pressure to act wisely. It was a delicate balance between preparation and restraint. Between caution and curiosity, small leaks of information began to circulate among staff, creating speculation and sometimes tension between teams. Some people feared that the warship could be a prelude to a larger conflict, while others hoped that it might be a peaceful mission from a secret faction. These conflicting theories caused friction, but they also highlighted one undeniable truth. The presence of the warship had changed the star system forever. No one could pretend that life would continue as it had before. Every action, every decision, every observation was now under the shadow of the unknown ship hovering at the system's edge. The sense of fear and suspicion was at its peak. The warship's intentions remained completely unclear. Its technology was far beyond what anyone had expected, and no one knew whether it was friend or foe. Every strategy, every precaution, and every communication effort had so far produced little result. Yet, despite the tension, everyone involved realized that this moment was historic. Humans had created something powerful enough to operate beyond normal rules, and they were now witnessing it in real. The star system had entered a state of cautious vigilance. People were learning that fear and suspicion could guide their decisions just as much as reason and science. The unauthorized human warship was no longer just an anomaly on the scanners. It had become a living question, a challenge to authority, and a test of humanity's ability to respond to the unknown. Every day, every hour, every decision carried weight, and everyone understood that what happened next could determine the safety of the entire system. The tension, uncertainty, and fear had grown. Suspicion had taken root alongside curiosity, and the system's inhabitants were learning that an unknown human presence could be just as threatening as any alien encounter. The stage was set for the next phase, where communication attempts, strategies, and choices would determine the path forward and reveal more about the warship's true purpose. This expands Part 2 into a full 1,300-word narrative in simple English, keeping it suspenseful, detailed, and engaging. I can continue the same way for Part 3 if you want, making the story flow smoothly. Do you want me to continue with Part 3? The situation in the star system had become almost unbearable. Days had passed since the unauthorized human warship entered the system, and the tension among scientists, military officers, and political leaders was at its peak. Everyone was on edge, knowing that a single mistake could trigger disaster. The first two phases, shock and suspicion, had shown the world how unpredictable and dangerous this warship could be. Now, in this phase, it was time for first contact. The system's authorities understood that they could not wait any longer. Communication attempts had to be made, but the risk of provoking hostility made every decision heavy with responsibility that the Central Command. Analysts prepared multiple strategies. They had learned a lot about the warship from distant observations, its speed, its trajectory, the energy fluctuations of its shields, but they still had no way to know what the crew intended. Every small miscalculation could turn a peaceful encounter into a catastrophic event. Generals and political leaders debated endlessly about the right approach. Some insisted on a cautious stance, observing silently and gathering more intelligence before attempting contact. Others argued that time was running out, that the warship might interpret hesitation as weakness and act aggressively. The room was tense, every word measured, every suggestion weighed carefully. Communication channels were finally opened. A series of messages were sent using standard protocols, including formal greetings, warnings, and diplomatic language. The messages were designed to show both authority and respect, signaling that the system would defend itself if necessary but was willing to negotiate peacefully. The messages were repeated in multiple frequencies and languages, ensuring that every possible method of reception was used. The hope was simple: to make contact without provoking hostility. But hope alone could not eliminate fear. The unknown intentions of the warship's crew kept everyone anxious. Meanwhile, the warship itself made subtle movements. It altered its trajectory slightly, moving closer to the system's populated zones, though never approaching too quickly. Every small adjustment was carefully analyzed by the system's monitoring teams. It was clear that the warship was intelligent, but whether it was acting aggressively or cautiously was impossible to determine. Each movement prompted new simulations and calculations. Military officers and scientists collaborated intensely, comparing notes, interpreting data, and trying to understand the psychology of the ship's crew. Every passing hour increased both anticipation and dread in the civilian sectors of the system. Preparations were quietly stepped up. Although most people were unaware of the exact details, security personnel and emergency services were on high alert. Spaceports were temporarily closed to non-essential traffic, and cargo shuttles were rerouted. Everyone involved understood that even minor missteps could have severe consequences if the warship acted unpredictably. The balance between maintaining normal life and preparing for potential disaster was delicate. Every action had to be measured, and yet, the need for readiness was urgent. As the communication attempts continued, the warship finally responded, though not in the clear, direct way that the system's leaders had hoped. A fragmented signal appeared on their screens. It was heavily encrypted, partially garbled, and difficult to interpret. Analysts worked around the clock to decode it. The initial translation revealed that the crew was aware of being monitored, and that they were aware of the authority of the system's leadership. Yet, the tone was neither overtly hostile nor entirely friendly. It was ambiguous, creating an uneasy sense of both relief and tension. The crew had not attacked, but they had not confirmed peaceful intentions either. Military forces were deployed in readiness, while negotiations continued remotely. Defense platforms aligned their targeting systems, but weapons were not activated unless absolutely necessary. The leaders knew that any aggressive move could trigger a violent reaction, but they also could not ignore the potential threat. Patrol drones and observation satellites tracked the warship constantly, monitoring even the slightest shift in energy readings or trajectory. Every decision was critical. The balance between diplomacy and defense was razor-thin. Inside the warship, the crew faced their own set of tensions. They knew they were being observed and that the system's leaders were trying to understand their intentions. The crew had their own mission and their own secrets, and they were acutely aware that any misstep could trigger an immediate attack. The decision to finally transmit a message had been difficult, and they had chosen carefully how much to reveal. The fragmented nature of the signal was deliberate, a test to gauge the system's reaction and a way to protect sensitive information. The stakes were immense, and every action was calculated. As decoding of the message continued, new insights emerged. The warship's crew claimed that they were not enemies but were survivors of a classified program that had been erased from official records. Their mission had been deemed lost years ago, yet they had continued to operate independently. The revelation sent shockwaves through the command centers. Not only was the warship advanced and unregistered, but the crew had also been living in isolation, operating outside any known regulations. Their presence in the system was now both a mystery and a challenge to authority. The reaction to this revelation was mixed. Some leaders felt relief that the warship was not immediately hostile, while others remained deeply suspicious. How could humans create such a powerful vessel and remain hidden for so long? What were the real goals of the crew, and could they be trusted? Every new piece of information raised more questions. Analysts continued simulations to anticipate possible moves, while military officers revised defensive strategies to prepare for every scenario. Even as communications slowly progressed, the tension never fully dissipated. The system's inhabitants became aware of the broader implications. The presence of a human warship operating independently and outside official controls suggested the existence of other unknown programs or secret operations. If such a ship could exist undetected, what else could be out there? What other capabilities might humans have developed without public knowledge? These questions added layers of concern, not only about immediate safety but also about the future of human governance in space. Trust, once assumed, was now in question. Meanwhile, the fragmented communication continued to evolve. More information trickled in from the warship, allowing analysts to understand some aspects of its purpose. They learned that the crew sought asylum and safe harbor in the system, but they also hinted at knowledge of dangerous activities elsewhere. It was clear that they possessed information that could destabilize interstellar relations if mishandled. The realization added a sense of urgency. The situation was no longer just about the ship's presence, but about what it knew and what it might reveal. Tension remained high among both military and civilian populations. The constant observation of the warship, the repeated analysis of signals, and the anticipation of further communication created an atmosphere of continuous stress. Leaders had to make decisions quickly and carefully, knowing that mistakes could escalate into conflict. They balanced preparation with restraint, defense with diplomacy, and skepticism with cautious optimism. Every action mattered, and the consequences were potentially catastrophic. The first contact attempts had revealed critical truths. The warship was not immediately hostile, but its presence was deliberate, intelligent, and unsettling. Its crew was human, yet operating outside the system's knowledge and control. The situation was unprecedented, requiring both caution and ingenuity. The people of the star system had learned that diplomacy, vigilance, and preparation were essential in dealing with an unknown human threat. The stage was set for the next chapter. The warship's intentions were slowly emerging, but uncertainty remained. Communication had begun, defenses were ready, and the potential for misunderstanding was ever present. The system was learning to navigate a delicate balance between trust and caution, diplomacy and defense, as it prepared for the revelations and consequences that the warship's presence would bring in the coming days. This expands Part 3 into 1,300 words, keeping it simple and immersive while showing the tension, strategies, and human emotions involved. I can continue with Part 4 in the same style, making it equally detailed and thrilling. Do you want me to continue with Part 4? The tension in the star system had reached a breaking point. After days of observation, speculation, and cautious communication attempts, the mystery of the unauthorized human warship began to unravel. What had started as a silent threat at the edge of the system now became a question of truth and revelation. The ship, which had initially seemed hostile or dangerous, was about to tell its story, and the revelations would shock everyone involved. For weeks, analysts had worked tirelessly to decode the fragmented messages sent from the warship. Each new signal provided small pieces of information, but the puzzle was far from complete. Scientists and military officers collaborated around the clock, piecing together energy patterns, linguistic codes, and subtle navigational signals. Slowly, the picture emerged. The warship was not an attack vessel sent to conquer or destroy. It was carrying humans who had lived in secret, cut off from official human records for years. The idea was almost impossible to believe. How could such a massive and advanced ship remain hidden for so long, operating without oversight or acknowledgement from any official authority? The initial transmission that finally revealed the truth was cryptic but undeniable. The crew identified themselves as survivors of a highly classified human Black Ops program, a mission that had officially been declared lost years earlier. They were erased from the records, as if they had never existed. In reality, they had survived, maintained their vessel, and continued operating in the shadows outside any known command structure. Their sudden appearance in this star system was not an act of aggression, but a desperate attempt to find refuge. They claimed to possess critical knowledge about other hidden operations that could destabilize interstellar relations if exposed or ignored. The revelation sent shockwaves through the command centers. Political leaders were stunned. Military officers struggled to recalibrate their strategies. Scientists marveled at the technological sophistication of the vessel, realizing that it represented an entire chapter of human engineering and strategy that had been erased from history. The system's inhabitants had prepared for an enemy, but instead, they faced humans seeking help, carrying dangerous secrets that could have consequences far beyond the star system itself. Despite the initial relief, caution remained high. The crew's existence was proof of human secrecy and deception, and no one could be entirely sure of their intentions. Could they be trusted? Did they have hidden motives that could become threats later? While the warship's message claimed peaceful intentions, the reality of secrecy and prior Black Ops activity made every statement suspect. Military officers had to remain vigilant, even as they prepared to offer limited safe harbor. They knew that trust had to be earned slowly, and every decision could impact the safety of the system's planets and colonies. Communication between the system and the warship intensified. Over the next several days, the crew provided more information, explaining their history, the purpose of their original mission, and the reasons they had been forced into hiding. The story was extraordinary. Years ago, they had been sent on a top-secret mission to explore and secure regions far beyond known human influence. An unexpected crisis had forced the mission into secrecy, erasing them from official records to protect broader political and security interests. During their years in isolation, they had maintained their vessel, or upgraded its systems, and stayed alert, always aware that discovery could be dangerous but also necessary as the warship's story unfolded. The human crew began to share glimpses of the knowledge they carried. They had gathered intelligence about rogue operations, illegal experiments, and militarization that had remained hidden from public view. This information, if handled carefully, could prevent future disasters and promote stability across multiple star systems. However, it was also volatile. A single misinterpretation or leak could spark conflict, making the presence of the warship both a blessing and a potential hazard. The system's leaders realized that they were in a delicate position. They had to provide refuge while also managing the broader political and security implications. Throughout this phase, coordination between scientists, military leaders, and political authorities was intense. Every action was weighed against multiple outcomes. They monitored the warship constantly, analyzing its systems, energy outputs, and crew activity. Defensive measures were maintained, but weapons were not deployed unless absolutely necessary. Communication lines were expanded, encrypted, and redundantly secured. Negotiators worked to build trust, using the warship's transmissions to establish a cautious dialogue. Despite the danger, there was a growing sense of relief. The threat was not immediate, and the crew was willing to communicate and cooperate. The human crew aboard the warship also faced internal tension, living in isolation for years, operating in secrecy, and suddenly revealing themselves to the authorities carried immense risks. They had to carefully choose what to reveal and how to reveal it. Missteps could result in immediate attack or confinement, but remaining silent would prolong their isolation and limit their ability to achieve their goals. The decision to transmit the fragmented messages that led to eventual understanding was deliberate, representing a balance between caution and necessity. Every communication was measured, precise, and strategic. Gradually, a fragile relationship began to develop between the system's authorities and the warship's crew. Trust was built slowly, as limited docking and observation were allowed under strict supervision. Scientists were granted access to some areas of the ship, allowing for the verification of technology and systems. Military officers monitored movements closely, ensuring no unauthorized actions could take place. Even as the system provided controlled sanctuary, the situation remained tense, with every step carefully planned and executed. The presence of the warship had created a new normal, an unprecedented situation requiring diplomacy, vigilance, and mutual respect. The implications of the revelation became clear. The existence of the warship and its crew exposed human capacity for secrecy and autonomous action beyond known authority. It raised questions about accountability, ethics, and the limits of oversight in human space exploration and militarization. The knowledge possessed by the crew, if used wisely, could prevent future catastrophes, but if mismanaged it could ignite conflicts. Leaders in the star system realized that this was not just a local problem. It was a situation with far-reaching consequences for human governance and interstellar stability in the civilian sectors. Awareness of the situation grew slowly. Security measures remained discreet, but people began to sense that something extraordinary had occurred. Observatories and communication centers quietly prepared for potential public announcements. While routine operations adjusted to account for the presence of the warship, scientists shared what they could about the technology and history of the ship, generating awe and curiosity among the population. The human story behind the vessel became a source of fascination, even as the system remained cautious about fully revealing all details. The truth of the warship had fundamentally changed the perspective of the star system's inhabitants. They had expected an intruder, a potential threat, or an enemy. Instead, they discovered humans operating outside the boundaries of known authority, carrying knowledge that could influence political and military decisions far beyond the system. The warship was no longer just an anomaly. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, secrecy, and the complexity of interstellar life. The story of its crew, once hidden and classified, was now beginning to reshape relationships, policies, and priorities in ways that could not be undone. The star system entered a delicate period of adjustment. The presence of the warship had shifted the balance between fear and understanding, suspicion and trust. While the immediate threat had eased, the implications of what had been revealed were profound. The system had to navigate new realities, providing safety for the crew, managing sensitive knowledge, and preparing for future consequences that were still unknown. Every decision carried weight, and the story of the unauthorized human warship would continue to shape the system for years to come. This expands Part 4 into 1,300 words, keeping it simple, immersive, and suspenseful while emphasizing the revelation and consequences. I can now do Part 5 in the same style, concluding the story with a strong and satisfying ending. Do you want me to continue with Part 5? The aftermath of the revelation brought a new kind of tension to the star system. The unauthorized human warship was no longer a mystery. Its crew had been identified, and their story had been partially revealed. Yet, even as the initial fear eased, a complicated web of consequences emerged. The system's authorities now faced an unprecedented challenge: how to integrate these humans, who had lived outside the law and knowledge of all others, into a society that had prepared for hostility and mistrust. Every step had to be cautious, every decision deliberate, and every action weighed against both immediate and long-term consequences. The warship now allowed limited docking under strict supervision, but it became the focal point of a massive investigation. Scientists, engineers, and military officers were granted controlled access to the vessel, studying its advanced systems, shields, and propulsion technology. The level of sophistication was astonishing, far surpassing anything in the official human fleet. Energy patterns were analyzed, weapon capabilities measured, and navigational systems tested. Each discovery brought excitement, but it also raised questions about oversight, secrecy, and the consequences of human technological progress outside official supervision. The warship was a testament to human ingenuity, but also a warning about the dangers of unchecked power. Inside the command centers, political leaders debated what to do next. They had to balance the crew's need for protection with the security of the entire star system. How much could be trusted? How much knowledge could be safely shared? Every decision had ripple effects, potentially affecting interstellar diplomacy, military stability, and human governance. Policies had to be developed on the fly, creating a framework for oversight of humans who had operated entirely outside recognized authority. The situation highlighted gaps in the existing regulations for human space activities and raised urgent questions about accountability and transparency. Meanwhile, the crew of the warship adjusted to their new reality. For years, they had operated in isolation, surviving on limited resources, maintaining their vessel, and avoiding detection. Now, they had to navigate a system that monitored every move and imposed rules they had never known. Trust had to be built slowly. They cooperated with scientists, engineers, and military personnel, sharing information selectively and carefully, aware that any misstep could provoke alarm or even retaliation. For the first time in years, they were not completely alone. Yet freedom came with responsibilities they had never faced before. The civilian populations of the star system slowly learned of the situation. Authorities released controlled information to prevent panic while informing people that an extraordinary, unexpected event had occurred. Curiosity and fascination spread. Scientists, historians, and engineers marveled at the advanced technology and the story of humans who had survived outside official knowledge for years. Media outlets carefully reported the facts, emphasizing the cooperation and peaceful resolution of what could have been a disaster. The presence of the warship became a source of awe and discussion, not only about the technology but also about human resilience, secrecy, and survival. As investigations progressed, the broader implications became clear. The existence of such a ship revealed that humans were capable of operating entirely independently of oversight, creating technology and systems far beyond official awareness. This raised questions about governance, ethics, and the ability to regulate human activities in space. Political leaders realized that interstellar law and human regulations needed to evolve to account for the possibility of hidden factions or rogue operations. The warship was both a warning and an opportunity, a warning that secrecy could be dangerous, and an opportunity to learn from the technological and operational advancements the crew had achieved. Simultaneously, the warship's crew shared information about the Black Ops programs that had been erased from official records. They provided evidence of rogue experiments, unauthorized militarization, and the hidden manipulation of interstellar activities. The information was sensitive and potentially destabilizing. It had to be handled with care, ensuring that no accidental disclosure could trigger conflict. Analysts worked tirelessly to verify every claim, cross-referencing with known records, intelligence reports, and technological data. The process was slow and meticulous, but it gradually built a more accurate picture of human activity beyond public oversight. Military leaders remained cautious. Despite the peaceful cooperation, defense platforms continued to monitor the warship, ensuring no sudden movement or aggressive action could occur. Simulations were conducted to anticipate all possible outcomes, from hostile rebellion to diplomatic misunderstandings. Contingency plans were refined, personnel were briefed, and every precaution was maintained. Even as trust slowly grew, the memory of the ship's sudden, unauthorized entry remained a reminder that vigilance was necessary. Lessons had been learned. Humans could be as unpredictable and powerful as any external threat, and preparedness could never be ignored. Over time, relationships between the system's authorities and the warship's crew improved. Gradually, limited integration occurred. The crew helped improve defense systems, shared knowledge about advanced propulsion, and assisted in refining energy shields. Their insights proved invaluable, giving the star system technological advantages previously unknown. In return, the authorities provided safe housing, resources, and a framework for monitoring, ensuring the system remained secure. Both sides recognized the importance of cooperation. This phase marked the beginning of a fragile but constructive relationship, one that combined the experience and innovation of the warship's crew with the oversight and structure of the official authorities. At the same time, political discussions extended beyond the star system. Neighboring systems and Earth Command were informed carefully, balancing transparency with security. The situation became a case study in diplomacy, crisis management, and interstellar law. Lessons were drawn about the dangers of secrecy, the need for better monitoring of human activities, and the potential for rogue operations to impact multiple systems. The warship's entry had sparked broader thinking about governance and human responsibility across space, ensuring that its impact would be felt far beyond the immediate system. The human story of survival, secrecy, and eventual revelation also became a source of inspiration. Scientists, engineers, and civilians alike were fascinated by the resilience of the crew, their ability to survive in isolation, and their dedication to maintaining the warship despite extreme challenges. Historians began documenting the events, creating records that would ensure the story was remembered. The incident highlighted not only the dangers of hidden power but also the remarkable resourcefulness and endurance of humans, capable of surviving against all odds and ultimately seeking peaceful resolution. The star system had undergone a transformation. What had started as a sudden, unauthorized intrusion had evolved into a controlled, managed situation with profound implications. The system had learned to handle unprecedented challenges, balancing trust and vigilance, cooperation and security. The warship, once a symbol of fear, had become a source of knowledge, technology, and insight. Its presence forced the system to reevaluate policies, prepare for the unknown, and acknowledge that human ingenuity, both public and hidden, could be both a threat and a gift. The system had reached a new equilibrium. The warship was integrated under careful supervision, its crew working with authorities to prevent further surprises. Lessons had been learned about secrecy, trust, and human capability. The system had survived the crisis, and in doing so, had strengthened its policies, defenses, and understanding of the broader universe. The story of the unauthorized human warship would remain a landmark event, a tale of fear, revelation, and resolution that demonstrated the complexity and unpredictability of humanity itself. This expands Part 5 into 1,300 words, concluding the story in simple, engaging English while showing resolution, consequences, and lasting impact. If you want, I can also combine all 5 parts into a single cohesive narrative of about 6,500 to 7,000 words, ready to read like a full story. Do you want me to do that?